You walk every day, eat carefully, try your hardest, yet your belly won't change. What if one tiny morning habit is secretly stopping everything? You can do everything right. Walk every morning, eat less, stay disciplined, and still watch your belly refuse to change. That realization hit me harder than I expected, not because it was frustrating, but because it felt like a betrayal of logic. If effort leads to results, then why were so many hard-working people stuck in the exact same place year after year? I remember noticing it first in quiet, ordinary moments. A friend who never skipped his morning walk, yet kept tightening his belt one notch at a time. A relative who cut out desserts completely, but still carried that same stubborn weight around the waist. And eventually, I saw the same pattern staring back at me in the mirror. Fat would leave the face, it would leave the arms, sometimes even the legs, but the belly stayed. At some point, I stopped asking the usual question, "What should I do more of?" and started asking a different one that felt almost uncomfortable. What if the problem isn't effort at all? What if the body is following rules we don't fully understand? That thought sparked something in me, not panic, not guilt, curiosity. The kind of curiosity that makes you stay up late reading studies, listening to researchers, and paying closer attention to your own body than you ever have before. Because the human body is not lazy. It's not stubborn out of spite. It's a survival machine, guided by chemical signals and ancient instincts that were designed to keep us alive, not necessarily lean. And the more I looked into the biology behind fat storage, the more I realized something quietly unsettling. There may be a specific window every single morning, a short period right after you wake up, when your body is biologically prepared to burn fat more efficiently than at any other time of day. Not because you worked harder, but because your internal chemistry shifted while you were asleep. That possibility changed the way I looked at my mornings. It made me wonder whether the battle with belly fat was never about discipline in the first place, but about timing, about understanding the hidden signals that decide when the body stores energy and when it finally lets go. That question, whether timing matters more than effort, led me down a path I didn't expect, straight into the quiet, invisible world of hormones. For most of my life, I thought body fat was just extra weight sitting on the body, like luggage you carry around. But the deeper I looked into biology, the more I realized that belly fat is not passive at all. It behaves more like a guard, constantly listening for instructions, responding to signals, and making decisions based on the environment inside your body. And the two voices it listens to most closely are insulin and cortisol. I remember the moment this clicked for me. It wasn't during a workout or a diet plan. It was while reading about how insulin works, how this single hormone can completely change what your body does with energy. When insulin rises, your body doesn't panic or malfunction. It simply shifts priorities. It moves into protection mode, storing fuel for later, just in case tomorrow brings uncertainty. From a survival standpoint, that makes perfect sense. For thousands of years, food wasn't guaranteed. The human body learned to save energy whenever it could. The problem is that modern life rarely feels dangerous on the outside, but inside the body, stress and constant eating can create signals that look like an ongoing emergency. That's where cortisol enters the story. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone, but what fascinated me most is where its effects show up. When cortisol stays elevated for long periods, from deadlines, poor sleep, financial worries, or simply rushing through life, the body begins to store energy close to vital organs. It's a protective instinct, a biological insurance policy. And that storage location is usually the abdomen. The more I understood this, the less I saw belly fat as an enemy, and the more I saw it as a response, a message from the body trying to keep us safe. And once I accepted that idea, another realization quietly followed. If hormones are the true decision makers behind fat storage and fat burning, then changing those signals, even slightly, might change everything about how the body uses energy. And that realization naturally pushed me to look for a moment in the day when those hormonal signals might quietly shift in our favor. The answer, surprisingly, was hiding in the most ordinary place, the hours we spend asleep. While we rest at night, something remarkable happens inside the body. No meals, no snacks, no steady stream of incoming fuel. For 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours, the system keeps running using only what is already stored. The heart keeps beating, the brain keeps working, cells repair themselves, and energy is slowly drawn down like a battery powering a machine through the dark. By morning, the internal landscape looks very different from the rest of the day. The easy fuel circulating in the bloodstream has been largely used. Insulin, the signal that encourages storage, naturally falls to its lowest point. Another hormone, glucagon, quietly rises and begins sending a different message: release what you have saved. When I first understood this, it felt like discovering a hidden rhythm that had been there all along. Not a trick, not a hack, but a biological window. A moment when the body is already prepared to tap into its reserves because it has no other choice. That's when movement takes on a new meaning. If you step outside during this state, before food arrives, before the day fully begins, your muscles start asking for energy immediately. And the body, finding no quick supply coming in, turns to what it has stored. It begins to draw from fat, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, like pulling from a savings account that has been waiting to be used. What convinced me this wasn't just theory was seeing the research behind it. In controlled studies, people performing the exact same morning exercise burned noticeably more stored fat when they did it before eating. Nothing else changed, not the distance, not the speed, not the effort, only the biological state. That simple difference made me rethink the entire concept of discipline. Maybe success isn't always about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing the same thing at the moment when the body is finally ready to cooperate. But once I saw how powerful that morning window could be, another question started to bother me. If the body is ready to cooperate at that moment, why do so many people still miss the results? The answer, I eventually realized, wasn't hidden in complicated science. It was hidden in a habit so ordinary that most of us perform it without a second thought. I began paying closer attention to mornings, almost like a quiet observer. Not judging, just noticing. The routine looked familiar everywhere, in my own kitchen, in friends' homes, even in cafes during early hours. Someone wakes up, reaches for a cup of coffee, and adds just a little something to make it taste better. A splash of creamer, a teaspoon of sugar, maybe a small bite of fruit, or a cracker grabbed on the way out the door. It never feels like a big decision. In fact, it feels responsible, even healthy. We tell ourselves we need a bit of energy before moving. We assume such a small amount of food couldn't possibly change the body in any meaningful way. But biology doesn't measure food the way we do emotionally. It measures signals. The moment even a tiny amount of carbohydrate or sugar enters the digestive system, the body responds instantly. Insulin rises, not dramatically, but enough to send a clear message: new fuel has arrived. And once that signal is released, the body shifts direction. Instead of tapping into stored reserves, it begins using the fresh supply that just entered the bloodstream. Nothing is broken, nothing is failing, the system is simply doing its job, protecting energy for later, just as it was designed to do. I remember feeling both surprised and relieved when this finally made sense to me. Surprised, because something so small could change the outcome of an entire morning. Relieved, because it meant the solution wasn't about working harder or punishing the body. It was about awareness. Sometimes the difference between progress and frustration isn't found in dramatic changes. It's found in the quiet details, the small, almost invisible choices we make before the day truly begins. And once I understood how small morning choices could quietly change the body's direction, the next question naturally followed. If we get the timing right, what does the routine itself actually need to look like? For a while, I assumed the answer had to be complicated. Longer workouts, faster pace, more intensity, that's what we're often taught, that results come from pushing harder. But the deeper I explored biology, the more I realized the body doesn't respond best to extremes. It responds to rhythm. One detail that kept showing up in both research and real-life observation was duration. Not 10 rushed minutes before work. Not 2 exhausting hours that leave you drained for the rest of the day. The body seems to settle into its most efficient pattern somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes of steady movement. What fascinated me was how gradual the transition is. In the first stretch of a walk, the body is still waking up. Circulation increases. Muscles loosen, breathing becomes deeper. It's almost like an engine warming on a cold morning, preparing itself before reaching a stable speed. Then, somewhere after that initial phase, movement begins to feel smoother. The body finds its rhythm, and energy use becomes more consistent. Intensity matters too, but not in the way many people expect. I used to believe that running faster would automatically produce better results. Yet biology tells a quieter story. When movement becomes too intense, especially early in the day, the body can interpret it as stress. Heart rate spikes, tension rises, and the system shifts toward protection rather than efficiency. A moderate, sustainable pace, one that feels purposeful but not overwhelming, seems to create the most stable environment for steady energy use. Another piece of the puzzle that surprised me was hydration. After a full night of sleep, the body begins the day slightly dehydrated, and even mild dehydration can slow metabolic processes. Simply drinking water before stepping outside helps the system function more smoothly from the start. But the lesson that stayed with me the most was not about minutes, speed, or technique. It was about consistency, not the dramatic kind that lasts for a week, but the quiet kind that repeats day after day. Because real change, in biology as in life, rarely happens through sudden effort. It happens through small actions performed often enough that the body begins to trust the pattern. In the end, what this journey taught me is something surprisingly simple yet deeply reassuring. The body is not working against you. It is always responding to signals. When we understand those signals and align our habits with biology instead of fighting it, progress becomes more natural and sustainable. You don't need extreme discipline or punishing routines. You need awareness, patience, and consistency. A short walk before breakfast may seem small, but repeated daily, it becomes a powerful message to your body that you are ready to change, not through force, but through understanding. Now I'm curious about you. Would you be willing to try a morning walk before breakfast tomorrow, or have you already experienced something similar? Please share your thoughts down in the comments, so everyone can learn from each other. And if this video helped you see your body in a new way, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support truly keeps the motivation alive to create more meaningful content in the future.